Eric from Winnipeg, you idiot. Not that I'm calling Eric an idiot, but that's a classic Chris Jericho moment. Every time I hear Winnipeg, it makes me think. I'd really like to get your opinion on this. Kurt Angle has said that his TNA career was better than his WWE career. I never really watched TNA, but based on A, the incredible body of work he put together in WWE, and B, him battling his drug problems during his time in TNA, and C, him getting older and his injuries catching up with him during his TNA run, I cannot imagine his TNA run being objectively better than his WWE run. I hate to question the man himself, but is Kurt right about his own career? Kurt can have whatever opinion he wants to about his own body of work. That is different than how I look at his work and how you look at his work. There are wrestlers who have said, oh, my favorite match is with so-and-so. And they have their reasons for that being their favorite match. I'll watch the same match and think, God, that match was the shits. I've seen this guy have much better matches. That's because it's a subjective thing, and I look at it differently than he does. He's in the match. So maybe there are just some things about being in the ring with whoever the opponent is. They had a lot of fun working that night, but they look at it differently than the average viewer watching at home on TV. So it's fine to have differing opinions. I disagree. I think Kurt's the run that made Kurt was his WWE run. I think his TNA run was very good and very impressive given the problems that he had. The fact that he was still able to go out there and have the kind of matches he had against Samoa Joe and against AJ Styles and against Sting and against Abyss and against Ken Anderson and all the other people that he worked with and feuded with. Kurt had some classic matches in TNA. Kurt had legendary matches in WWE. And that is the biggest difference. The matches that Kurt had with Steve Austin. The matches that Kurt had with Brock Lesnar. The matches that he had with Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio and Edge. Think of the body of work that this guy put together in WWE. If you're asking me to weigh one over the other, I'm going to vote for the WWE run. But he had a great run in TNA. There's no doubt about it. He had a longer run in TNA, which is hard to even fathom that if you add up the number of years from his first WWE run to his entire run with TNA, his TNA run was longer than his WWE run, which just blows my mind when I think about that. But longer, right? Quantity does not automatically make it better. Kurt may feel that way. That's great. As a fan of his work, I put the WWE run over the TNA run. Doesn't mean I'm right and doesn't mean he's wrong. That's just my opinion. Kevin in Albany, New York, great promo from Apollo Crews on SmackDown this week and a great character change. We shit on WWE television and creative so much. Who gets credit for this? Do you think this is Crews going to them and saying this is what I want to do? Well, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you for sure. But what I can tell you is that everything is approved ultimately by Vince McMahon. So whether it was an Apollo Crews idea, maybe Daniel Bryan, who obviously has some level of creative influence on SmackDown, maybe, he had something to do with it. Did Paul Heyman have anything to do with it? Probably not, since he no longer works for them in a creative capacity. Whoever you want to give credit to, you got to give credit to Vince McMahon. Because whoever comes up with the idea, it doesn't make TV unless Vince McMahon says it's okay to make TV. I don't believe for a second it was Vince's idea, but he approved it. So I don't know why we have to assign credit for every little idea. But if you want to, then you got to give Vince McMahon credit, right? Because it's his show and nothing gets approved without his say-so. Keith from London, England. It has now been a year since fans were no longer allowed into the buildings. How much of an impact do you think it's had on character development? Who would you say has benefited and who do you think has suffered and why? For example, Roman Reigns, I feel, if there were fans in the building and they tried to shit on his character change by shouting, "What?" It would have ruined the entire experience. In the same breath, the lack of fan reaction during Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns' feud really took away from the babyface hype in fighting the heel. Yeah, I think there's pros and cons. I mean, it goes both ways. I think mentioned before Bayley, and really Bayley and Sasha, but more so Bayley, was one of the biggest stars of that pandemic era of WWE shows from the empty performance center. And just the way that her character changed, the way that she would shit on Michael Cole and make little funny comments during her matches, or when she would come out, I was thoroughly entertained. And it kind of, I think it just brought her out of her shell a little bit in a way that we hadn't seen her before. So she's one of the first names I always come back to when I think back as far as like who really shined, who really benefited during that era. And I think she's one of them. Roman Reigns is another, absolutely. The way that he'll trash talk his opponents and the microphone will pick up little comments he makes when he's wrestling them. Because you wouldn't be able to hear that if you had a building with 5,000 or 10,000 people, right? Or a stadium with 50,000 people. I think every single person on that roster benefits in that way from this. But Roman, Bayley, Sasha, I think to a degree, those are sort of the names that really stand out to me. As far as the opposite and who was really hurt by it, I think you could say that everybody is hurt by it to a degree. I don't think you can just isolate, oh, this one guy was hurt more than most. I feel bad. Someone like Drew McIntyre hasn't had the benefit of a full audience. I feel bad for a lot of these guys when they have their big moments and their big title wins, that this is the era it came in. And there's a lot of matches and moments that were special that we can look back on and said, damn, even the Roman heel turn. I really wish there were people in the building. Oh, this is great, but this would have been so much better if there was this big reaction, this big, like maybe shocking reaction or something, because you live for that in wrestling, right? You live for those reactions. You can find video after video after video on YouTube. If you type in the top 10 biggest crowd reactions of all time, the top 10 biggest pops in WWE history. There are people who make highlight videos just based on the crowd reaction. When Edge returned at the Royal Rumble last year, he was very fortunate that it came at a time where we didn't yet really know the extent of how bad COVID was. It was obviously spreading at that point, but we didn't know, and things didn't get shut down for another month and a half. Imagine if Edge had made his return at the Royal Rumble either in that giant building, empty, or even in a place like the Thunderdome, but his first appearance in the ring in 9 years coming out to what? Piped in crowd noise? You think it would have had the same effect? So I think it's hurt everybody. Some, maybe a little bit more than others if they usually play off the audience reaction. I think it's hurt us, the fans, the viewer, because we are now beholden to people like Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard almost exclusively to make all of the decisions on what they feel is working and not working, what they feel is getting over and what they feel is not getting over. The fans should be the ultimate judge of that. That is how wrestling has always been. The ultimate judge of how well something is working or not is how the audience reacts to it. And it's television ratings and merchandise sales and stuff like that too, but it's paying for that ticket at the gate, looking out into that crowd and seeing how the people react. Are they reacting at all? Are they sitting on their hands? Are they doing the wave? Are they saying boring? Are they booing? Are they cheering? How are they reacting? Well, there's none of that now. Even the Thunderdome screens, if you've ever done the Thunderdome, and I was in the waiting room there once, they have people coaching you on how to react. All right, everybody, give the thumbs up. All right, give the thumbs down. Boo this guy, cheer that guy. Unless it works differently now. They're in total control of everything. They can manipulate things in any which way they want. And when they are able to finally get people back in the buildings, I hope that becomes a thing of the past, because it shouldn't be about that. If you're going to manipulate the crowd, manipulate them naturally. You can manipulate an audience reaction, if you want to book a certain angle or match to go a certain way. And if you can elicit the audience reaction that you want, that's a good way of manipulating the crowd. That means what you did worked. But ultimately, the people are going to boo and cheer whoever they want to boo and cheer for. So if I sit here and I say, oh, Drew McIntyre, he had a great run as the WWE champion in 2020, and I feel bad he didn't have full crowds, I genuinely believe he did a very good job in the role, even if the television ratings did not reflect that. But maybe if people were in the building, they would have been bored of Drew McIntyre. I don't know. There's no way to know. So that's what I mean. It's been an awful thing for the audience, because the people who are in control of what works and what doesn't, I don't necessarily trust their judgment. This is not Vince McMahon from 20 years ago. I don't necessarily trust their judgment on a lot of this stuff here in 2021.